so if you're a young man coming out of high school and you want to be a Catholic priest, you go to the minor seminary, okay? And you get your college credits at the minor seminary, and then when you get your bachelor's of theology, then you go to the major seminary, which is in New Orleans, the one that I showed that's next to the bishop's house.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you'll go and you'll get your Master's of Divinity. Now, if you are an older man and you have a college degree, you go straight into the major seminary in New Orleans on Carrollton Avenue, which is next to the Bishop's Palace. Okay. If you do not have a college degree, you generally go to Our Lady of Holy Cross in Algiers, and you get your bachelor's degree in whatever you want. And then you go to the major seminary, Notre Dame Seminary on Carrollton Avenue. Okay? But this seminary is for young men. They're probably about the older half will probably be about your age. They are studying for the Catholic priesthood at the minor seminary, which is on the Abbey grounds. Okay? Now, that's for diocesan priests, and they come from all over the South to study at that minor seminary and at the major seminary. Okay?
Right.
Now, that's diocesan that we're worried about, okay? Now, if you decide you want to be a monk there and you become a Benedictine, then you were trained. It doesn't matter if you are coming straight out of high school or if you're an older man, you are trained as a Benedictine monk at the Abbey, okay? And you do your coursework at the Abbey. For some advanced coursework, they might send you to Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Now, as a Benedictine monk, you are required to take the vows of obedience, which means you obey your abbot, chastity, which means you cannot have sexual relations, let's see, what's the other one? Poverty, which means you cannot have any money, and stability. Stability, for me, would be the hardest vow, because you are not allowed to leave the Abbey. You are not allowed to leave the Abbey. You might get to go once a year to visit your family, but your life as a Benedictine monk is at the Abbey. You pray, you run the seminary, you help out with the bookstore, you lead Mass, etc., etc. The Benedictines require a vow of total poverty. Like you were to relinquish all of your assets before you join them. Now, I don't know if they have like a special account they let you put them in to where, I know like when I was considering becoming a priest with the Society of Mary, I was able to put all my assets into a special account managed by my father. And when I left, I was able to get that money back. The Benedictines, I don't know what they do. That would be a question for a Benedictine monk. But the Benedictines wear a hood and robes, okay? Now, sometimes they wear the cleric, which is the Catholic priest's collar, but they are required to take the vow of stability, which means that they do not leave the Abbey. Now, their day begins at about 3 o'clock in the morning, where they go into prayers, and I'll show you where they pray. They pray the Liturgy of the Hours, they pray other prayers that I really don't know a lot of prayers because it follows the rules of Saint Benedict. They pray for about 2 hours, and they lead Mass, and then they go to breakfast, and then they do more prayer, and then they do their work, which they make coffins at the Abbey. They have a bookstore, which we're going to visit. They do other things at the Abbey. They man the minor seminary. And then they have lunch, and they have vespers at lunch, well, prayers at lunch, and then they go back to doing work, and then they have prayer in the evening, and they have Mass. They have Mass about 12-ish, I believe. Do you know what Mass is?
Service.
Mass is Catholic church service. We call it Mass because it's from the Greek missa, which means to proclaim. And it's essentially a prayer where you're invited to proclaim the news that you've heard at the end of the Mass service. But it is, now Catholic Masses, especially as of lately, which I like, is becoming more and more formal. Especially like in the Archdiocese of Atlanta, which is where when I go to Mass, when I visit Atlanta, I always go to Mass because they have a very formal Mass where part of it's in Latin. The Archdiocese of New Orleans is starting to go in that direction. But there are some churches like St. Margaret Mary that are more charismatic, that has guitars and drums and tambourines. I don't like that, so I don't go to St. Margaret Mary. But I went to St. Luke for many years, and it is very formal. And Sacred Heart, the Vigil Mass is formal, and I go to the Vigil Mass at Sacred Heart. But what you're going to be seeing is the Abbey, and you're going to see the Church of the Abbey, which is, I believe, St. Joseph's Catholic Church. Not 100% certain. You will see the monastery. We'll walk around the minor seminary. You'll see the bookstore. You will see the graveyard, which is beautiful, and you will see the river that runs past the Abbey. It is a really interesting piece of culture that we have in the North Shore, and not many people know about it. Not many people know about it. So it's interesting, even if you're not Catholic, it's interesting to see how the monks live.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to see how the monks live because they follow the rule of St. Benedict, which I could never follow. You know, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning for prayers does not appeal to me. Even though I pray a rosary every night, I don't think I could do Liturgy of the Hours at 3 o'clock in the morning. I like the Liturgy of the Hours, but I don't know if I could do that at 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's interesting. Now, the diocesan priests that run the diocese, they can have money. Some priests are actually quite wealthy. But they have to take a vow of obedience to their bishop and a vow of chastity, meaning they cannot have sexual relations. Priests are not allowed to marry. They are required to be celibate, which means no sexual relations. And they are required to live on the church grounds where they pastor, but they're able to leave those grounds. They can go to the movies, they can get paid, they can go to the mall, etc., etc. But, and many priests live in a rectory of the parish, but they might have their own private residence somewhere else that when they take vacations they go to. Or they might spend maybe 2 days of the week at their private residence, and they might spend 5 days a week in the rectory. One of my former priests, Father Mark Lomax, had a house in the French Quarter that he would visit. But yeah, the priests live in the rectory.
Is it related to like Masonry, like the Freemasons?
No, actually the Catholic Church and the Masonry are generally at odds with one another. The Catholic Church has an organization that's kind of like their answer to the Freemasons called the Knights of Columbus.
Yeah, Mama D's pizza. Bruce says it's really good. You like it?
I love it.
What's your favorite type?
Pepperoni and cheese. I'm simple.
Yeah.
I've had pepperoni pizza in Italy, and then I also had pepperoni with anchovies, which is called pizza Napoli, which is from Naples. Really good too. Really.
How was the pizza in Italy?
It's good.
Just got the pieces. They looking good. The aftermath. Food was good. Tore it up. Got 2 slices left. We'll tear them up too. So we headed into the St. Joseph Abbey right now. It's really nice.
There's a pond. I don't think they have fish in it, but there's a pond. bookstore's over there. And that's the Abbey Church. We'll go in a little bit.
Okay.
The monastery is that building. That's one of the retreat halls. If you want to retreat, you can go in there. And this is the cemetery. Normal people can be buried back here, but also a lot of the monks are buried back here.
Okay.
'99, they moved to Ponchatoula, stayed there for a few years. They moved here like 1903.
I'll take this off right away.
That's fine, yeah, that's fine. They actually built in this area, and there was a fire in 1905. One monk lost his life, and then they rebuilt it, and this is the building that was built primarily. This is where the monks lived, and there was a chapel on the 3rd floor. And then in 1929, the foundation of this building came in place. In 31, they started the construction, and 11 months later, the church was finished, believe it or not. It took them 11 months, so that's it. It's a Benedictine monastery. So the folks that live here are Benedictine monks. All right, so I'm gonna confuse you now for a second. So there's monks and there's priests. Right, you may not know the difference, but a monk is the one who lives here. Their motto is to work and pray. So they live here full time. They do a variety of things. There's the bees produce honey in the back. We make soap. They make candy. They make bread. They make caskets for burial. There's a cemetery in the back. There's a retreat center here as well. And about a mile that way, it's a kids' place called Camp Abbey where kids go for summer camp kind of thing. So that's what happens. When you see a monk that typically dressed in black, typically, and what you don't know is you can't tell whether they're a priest or just a monk. You have to know the difference. So when in doubt, you call them brother. If you know, happen to know their name, brother is always good. And if you happen to know they're a priest, you call them father. That's what the Catholics, how we respond to a priest.
Okay.
I won't get into a lot of details, but you can tell by what they wear whether they're a priest or not when they go to Mass. Okay, you can tell the difference. So that's kind of what's going on here. That again was the first building built. This is where the monks live now. They live in what's called a cloister, which is kind of their private area. They're not totally cloistered, which means they can leave to go out and do things around town and have dinner and do those things. But they belong to the abbot. The abbot is the head guy here. He's also a priest and a monk, but he's in charge of the whole place.
So they take a vow of stability.
But they take several vows. I'm not sure about stability. They take poverty and obedience, and I forget what the third one is.
I know it's poverty, chastity, obedience, and they told me stability, but they are allowed to leave the abbey every night?
They are, yes, they are.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we
good.
had a priest in our house. We do marriage prep for St. Peter Parish in town, and one of the priests here was servicing the wedding, and we brought him over for dinner. So, yeah, they can visit downtown.
Okay.
So it's got to have permission of the abbot or the prior, whoever's making the decision. That's kind of it. So that's kind of the outside of the world. So there's a lot of activities here on the campus. It's also the largest seminary college in the country. So the guys that go to school here, they earn a degree, but they don't be ordained a priest from here. They have to go to what's called a major seminary to go through 3 or 4 more years of training before they can become a priest. The process to become a priest is about 7 or 8 years, depending on how you do it. what your degrees are in, but no one comes out of here and gets ordained. They have to go someplace else for their final training. The closest place is in New Orleans. Is a seminary called Notre Dame in New Orleans. You may be familiar with
We
that.
passed it yesterday.
Yeah, it's
next to the Bishop's
on
Palace.
Carrollton, right off of Carrollton Avenue. That's a major seminary where you can actually earn your right to become a priest and be ordained at the end of that process.
Yeah.
And there's several of those around the country. They're all over. Okay, that kind of makes sense. We have 22 different dioceses from around the south and the southwest part of the states that go to send their students here. It's about 100 students on campus right now, 21 or 22 different dioceses. There's about 30 monks. Many are getting old. That's the nature of the beast. You've been to a Catholic Mass before, I take it? Have you ever been to a Mass?
No.
Never been to a Mass. Well, then I was going to say on the altar, usually there's one priest. If you go to a regular church or like a regular parish church somewhere, you have one priest. Here on the average, today, I bet at Mass, I wasn't here today, I used to come, but there were probably 7 or 8 priests on the altar because they're monks as well, so they're already on property. So they would call concelebrate the Mass.
Remember, the Mass is the service.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mass is the Catholic version of a service. Okay, I'll try not to overwhelm you with Catholic stuff, but I'll do a little bit.
No,
that's
it's
all right.
no problem. I like it.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go on in and we'll see what happens.
He was one of my best students.
And what did you teach?
I teach at Salmon High School. While I taught there, I'm now the director of behavior for a district in Virginia.
What part of Virginia?
Well, I'm going to be living in Richmond, but I'm going to take a position as director of behavior for Petersburg schools.
Okay. We lived in Northern Virginia for 5
Okay,
years.
yeah.
I'm retired Air Force.